Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, host of the Dr. William Clark podcast and Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Accurate Resources. This is the CRI podcast, and glad to be back in the saddle. We haven't done one of these in a minute now that I think about it. And we are off the heels of just drama around our country. And so there's so much going on around our country. However, we use this podcast to bring uplifting information and insight into what we're doing around workforce development. We are your local workforce development friend and professional that can help you at any point that you're looking for new opportunities. And we certainly been glad to be a part of the journey of many of you as you've been dealing with Corona and everything that comes along with that from a workforce development perspective. Today, got a special guest in the house. It's a gentleman that I've known since I moved here to Connecticut and newly minted, permanent CEO of Capital Community College, none other than Dr. Duncan Harris. Dr. Harris, what's going on, sir?
Hey, glad to be here. And I like the sound and thank you for that intro of newly minted. As you're aware, I was recently appointed by the Connecticut State College and University Board of Regents as the permanent CEO of Capital Community College. I actually was in the interim role for 2 years prior to that. And so a lot of your folks that are watching may have seen some of the work that Capital's engaged in over the last couple of years. And so, I have been in the middle of all of that. Prior to coming here, I was also at Manchester Community College for 22 years. So I've been working in the community college space in this region for quite some time. And then also a local guy. So live in Windsor with my wife and kids. I've been there 18 years now, 17 years. And then I grew up in Bloomfield. Shout out to all the Warhawks out there. And then I'm a proud alum of the University of Connecticut Huskies, and then also the Blue Devils in terms of Central Connecticut, where I did some graduate work. So I'm a local guy, but just honored and delighted to have been given the proverbial wheel, at Capital Community College with a long-standing 50-plus year history of doing good work in the Hartford community. So just honored.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're neighbors. Because I live in Windsor too. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would say let's go grab coffee, but, just we can't right now.
As long as they're 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's cool, man, to have you on the show. I mean, we've had a number of offline conversations over the years that, quite frankly, and I remember those conversations distinctly because they were at a pivotal time in my career, and just getting some insight from you, how to navigate a couple of issues, and it's been helpful. So now I get to share you with the audience, man, which is, I think, a cool thing. So I do want to talk about Dr. Harris, leading and educating the next generation. And the reason why I thought that you would be just an awesome guest to have this conversation with is because of your work as an educator, obviously as an administrator too, and the perspective that you have about what's going on with the next generation of talent that's coming in and out of Hartford, and those who specifically choose to go to CCC for their training needs. So obviously you told us a little bit about you, but I want to jump into this topic that I think is so key. And that is, what is your vision for the next generation of talent that we currently have and talent that will be coming to Harvard? What's your vision?
Yeah, what's interesting about that, and and as a man of color and Black man in particular, I think about the role of education in the generations within my family, right? And so, a little bit of historical context. So my grandfather, George Harris, the irony of being named George based on recent events, George Harris Sr. Was a sharecropper from Opelika, Alabama, right? And so he's there, got 12 kids. You're working on a farm, you have big families back then as an economic, in some part, kind of a means to work. And so they didn't own the land. They're there with cotton and things like that, and hogs and hunting and living off the land. And like many African Americans in the late 1920s, 30s, he decided to move north for better opportunity and for education in particular. So like my uncles, they didn't go to school. You know, they had to work. You know, my oldest uncles who've all passed, they never had formal education. And so my father and his younger brothers and sisters, when they moved to New Haven. They moved there. They worked with the train station. They were able to get some employment there. He had an ash truck. Cats don't even know what an ash truck. You know, we would drive around New Haven and they would pick up ashes from fire for garbage to feed his family. And then my grandmother baked things, and so she would bake and she'd clean houses. But my father was able to go to school, right? So as we're talking about these generations, and so my father went to school. He became a teacher. And you're hearing these lines in here, right? So he became a teacher and was actually a principal at Bassett School in New Haven, and then went back to school. He went to Southern, which is a teachers' college. Its original roots Central, and they produce, you know, our states, and they still produce, you know, our states, the masses for the teachers and the educators in our state. And so he went there, became a teacher, and so raised his family with this value of the power of education, right? And so grandfather, sharecropper, father, educator, goes on to get his PhD from Michigan State and become a college administrator. Once again, you hear this theme, right? And so, but his three sons all wasn't, you know, where you're going to go to school. It's not that you're going to be a scholar. It's that this is a value in our family now. And so in light of all of the things that are going on now, I think, and that's why I think, you know, that this next generation, that we need to really double down and insist on quality education. And I think that will be part of the source of breaking the school to prison pipeline and all these other ills that are impacting people in general and Black people in particular. And so there's, you know, when we talk about next generation, I think that I have an obligation. So my son is Grant Harris, is the next generation, and he's already taking college classes. You know, he's 15, and he's got, you know, he's taking a class this summer, took a class last year. And I think the part of this next generation that we need to insist on, and which is the great equalizer, is insisting on quality education for this generation. So and then, you know, on my mother's side too, you know, my mother moved here from the Caribbean, from the small island of Nevis. She was an orphan, but was able to come here, go to school, taught me how to read and do math before I went to school. Taught me how to speak with the Queen's English and recognize, you know, the power of oratory. You know, that came in large part from my mother, and who was home. We were blessed to have a stay-at-home mom. You know, I recognize the luxury that is, nowadays, based on, you know, the cost of living and things like that. But I know that I would not be a college president had it not been for my mother teaching me how to read before I went to nursery school. So there are some long-standing values and empirically sound strategy that our community can deploy, I think, and especially in this time, to really prepare this next generation for what's coming for them. The last thing I say about that in terms of this next generation is that they really need to be prepared to compete, right? And it's not competing with people in Hartford County. It's competing with a global society, right? And as we get smaller and smaller, I mean, the Earth is the same size as it was before, you know, despite, you know, but they're competing globally. And so we really need to kind of wake up, you know, with regard to how, in many instances, we're allowing our youth to not be as prepared academically and with regard to rigor as they should be. And I have something that I'll share with the project that Capital is working on in a little bit with regard to teachers. in our youth. So, but
Yeah.
that's they,
Yeah, I want to talk about teachers too, because I really find it interesting. You talked about, you said Southern produces
yeah.
the greatest critical mass of teachers. And I want to talk a little bit about education, Dr. Harris, because I think in the world of workforce development, which is
Yeah.
where I come from, which is what CRI is about, and of course you through your work at CCC, MCC, as a part of that, some can hear what you're saying about education and automatically go to the idea that you're promoting that everybody has to go to college, right? Now, and I'm gonna speak as an outsider, right? Looking at what MCC, CCC does, but let's talk about CCC because that's your
Yeah.
school. You guys do the traditional 2-year associate's degree that can lead to the 4-year opportunity. But you guys also do what we call occupational skills training. And talk to us about the value of CCC having a mix of those training opportunities. And then, as you're explaining this to us, talk about it in the context of education, as you're talking about your own family story.
Mm,
Why it's important for the next generation to get educated,
yeah.
and education not just being go get a degree, but perhaps it's a certificate, perhaps it's a semester here. Just walk us through what you guys do and how we should be framing our understanding of education.
Yeah, good points. And so I look at it as a continuum, right?
Yeah.
So there's peace to it as it relates to having credentials, being able to articulate what you know, and these I guess at some point they referred. I'll talk a little bit about this, but these soft skills, which are really essential skills that many of our youth have not had access to the curriculum for those essential skills, and so we'll talk about that in a second. But there is great usefulness and utility in all the programs that you talk about. And so when we talk about capital, it's not bifurcated, and we're not solely a credit degree shop. And as you mentioned, on our fourth floor, where we have our third floor, where we have our workforce and training programs, there's a plethora of opportunities for individuals to come in and get short-term certificate credentials that allow them to get to work now, right away. We actually are in the midst of doing some work with the Minority Construction Council project, right? And so we had a meeting with them where we're developing some curriculum that around the construction fields, right? And we have one of our faculty members is working with Jennifer Greer around building out curriculum to support youth from our area interested in the construction field. And so with all this work coming down the pike, Department of Transportation, the building, there's cranes in Hartford finally, and things like that. But there's a lot of opportunities that our youth can seize that opportunity to get a job that allows them to provide for themselves and their families. And so capital is engaged in that space. And I think, once again, when we talk about this continuum and kind of this toolkit, what are our youth putting in there? And sometimes it might be one of my associate's degrees, right? But other times it might be a 12-month, one of our SNAP programs that individuals can access for free, right? But that allows them to get a job. And at the same time, I would suggest, some of those programs are constructed in a way in which it's a feeder to get eventually your what you and I have in terms of a doctorate. But somebody might start in our community worker program, go into that, identify that they have a passion for working in our community and serving others, get an associate's degree, transfer, get a degree in social work, get an MSW, and then go get a clinical degree, right? And so there are, I think that part of this is, and I'm glad that you're providing me with this platform, is do something, grow, develop, and seek out places which can provide for that growth. I know that you and I are lifelong learners, and I take great delight in talking to individuals that are providing me with good intel and information, like yourself and others. And so what I would implore folks, that are listening, or folks that are watching your program that are connected with others, but is to get them to the well, right? I'm the well. I got 300,000 square feet at corner of Albany and Maine. You know, I want folks to come here or invite me to come talk, and we'll talk about opportunities for all people and especially brown people in this climate with what's going on in terms of how we're disproportionately impacted by COVID and the economy, things like that, employment. That we really need to ensure that we connect people with credit, non-credit, but education, right, in all of its myriad of forms that allow them to secure employment and provide for themselves and their families, right? And so, yeah, I'm not one to say that it's only an associate's degree or bachelor's degree. I know that I pay, you know, if somebody needs a plumber or whatever, I know that it makes good money. You know, electricians, you know, there are all of these industries, I think, and we're seeing it even now more in COVID, where a lot of those baby boomers are aging out. And there are ample opportunities for the millennials to really step into those spaces and to, you know, once again, with the proper training, credentials, certifications, and really, you know, secure employment to provide for themselves and their families.
Man, I want to touch on some of these buzzwords that I'm hearing. You know, you mentioned training. You mentioned education as a part of the toolkit. For people who are listening and watching this conversation, who are going to automatically say that, listen, you guys both are doctors. It's easy for you to say, right? You guys both run training programs. Mine is more soft skills. You run a more diverse program in the academic space. It's easy for you guys to talk about these things. Dr. Harris, give us some of the secrets you've noticed over your years of being in academia and what you see in the CCC world. Give us some of the secrets of successfully completing an educational experience. And here's the context of my question why I'm asking that, because some will say college or a college-like experience is not for me. Mm-hmm. Okay, which I get, and I think you would agree to as well. However, if you're going to go from high school to work, mm-hmm. or just bypass the higher education experience, which is fine, we have to acknowledge that every career, every profession requires some sort of training, whether it is a 1-hour training on how to work the cash register, whether it's a multi-hour training on how to cut hair, whether it's a multi-hour training on how to change oil in a vehicle, a multi-hour training on how to draw blood as a CNA, multi-hour training on how to become a social worker, whatever the case may be, it's going to require training. So give us some secrets to successfully completing the educational experience so we can start to demystify for folks the way they see education and learning.
Yeah. I think that there's an analogy that I use often, which is, you know, when I do a lot of work with young men and males, and, you know, and a lot of times they may be athletes, right? And so the analogy is, if I had the opportunity to spend, you know, 2 weeks working with Stephen Curry, right? You know, I would do that. Now, when I went to him, I would be respectful of his craft, his knowledge, the fact that he put the work in, etc. And you could cut and paste that analogy to other fields, right? So even whatever you mentioned, so if I go over to Hoffman and I'm working with a master mechanic and I have 2 weeks to spend learning how to work on this vehicle, I do that, right? Now that also goes for my biotechnology professor, Dr. Cleo Roll, a brilliant African-American female with a PhD from Clemson. So what I expect when my students go into Dr. Roll's class is that they, in a similar fashion to Stephen Curry, for those 15 weeks, recognize that this brilliant instructor is is the master teacher. And if you do your part, you know, you're going to study, you know, you're going to go through the examples, and you're going to defer as appropriately to her expertise. You should grow and acquire competency in that area as a result of that. So now that could be 1 week, or that could be 15, or it could be like our doctorates, 3 or 4 years with a 100-page dissertation at the end of it. But if you go in with that and you recognize that my growth is intimately attached to me honoring and respecting your expertise, it happens, right? And I think about some of the brilliant professors that I've had that, you know, when I went in with the right mindset, you know, I came out, you know, just transformed with whatever that topic was. And so what I would encourage the folks watching is that, you know, if you go in with that mindset, that is oftentimes the outcome. Now, if you know everything going before you go in, all right, yeah, you're on your phone the whole time. But if I go in and I say, I want to get everything that's in your head about this topic, because I know that will serve me well in the long run, you know, those are the folks that really, you know, are the most, you know, some of the most successful people that I know. And here's the other thing that I'll say is I've got amazing faculty, got about 64 full-time faculty, another 140 adjunct faculty. And in general, they all have a passion for their discipline. And when students come in with the right mindset, prepared to engage and work, you know, the magic happens, right? So I will agree with you that there's time and place. So if you ain't ready, you ain't ready. So you know you can't really fake that. If you're not going to go, it's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if you show up, you have the right mindset, you know, you connect this somehow to you being successful and getting ahead or having what you need to build a life for yourself and your family, it happens. I'm not minimizing it, you know. So you got to have some cognitive brain matter. One of the things that I know is our brain matter is the same as anybody's brain matter. And we could do calculus, we could go to the moon, we could do whatever we set our mind to when we're serious about it. And so, but when people, you know, commit in that way, you know, the magic of learning happens, whether that's credit or non-credit.
Man, I'm gonna share a secret, you know, that I learned when I graduated with my doctorate degree, and that is, they told me at the beginning, and I found it to be true at the end, that I graduated stupid. I graduated dumber with a doctorate degree than I did going in. And the context of that statement is, you know, people with master's degrees tend to think of themselves as God's gift to the space that they're studying. But when you become a doctor, right, you become a specialist in something so constraining, if you will. And one of my professors put it like this: I am an expert of the period at the end of the third sentence in chapter 6 of volume 22 of this anthology, which means I know just about this much about my topic, and everything else I defer to the talent and skill of other people. And to the what you said about Steph and the master mechanic and the lovely professors at CCC, man, I think any person going into any learning environment has to come in humble. I mean, even in a workspace on a daily basis, there are people that I work with that know more than me about a certain topic, and it's incumbent upon me to go in humble, to learn what I don't know, and also to go in clear-headed about what I do know, right? Yeah. It is a give and take that we have to balance.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that comment that you made is it's actually liberating and freeing once you recognize that you don't know everything and you don't need to know everything, right?
Yeah.
And that also creates opportunity. And so I think that sometimes there's this mindset that's not a growth mindset that prevents especially males and young males of color, from engaging in this enterprise because they've been conditioned to feel as though they have to know everything. But the sponges, and if you come in, eager to learn, you're good, right? And so I think that's another, hopefully, a takeaway from some of the folks that might be watching is how liberating, and that it's a sign of strength, not weakness,
Yep.
when you recognize how little you know, right?
Yep, man, that's powerful. Now, CCC under your watch has successfully forged some good partnerships around the city of Hartford, and particularly with organizations that are in the workforce development space, which is great. Some friends that we may have in common at CWP and others.
Yep.
But talk to us about what you envision CCC's role in developing the next generation of the workforce. Let's be specific about that. Where does CCC play a role in all that?
It's interesting. I was just on a meeting with one of the regional, and I'm actually a board member with CWP. So I was just added to their board of directors. And so that gives me a seat at the table to help inform and ensure that there's alignment between the programs that we have and we're offering at Capitol and what.
Congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks. We have work to do there. And I think it was interesting, one of the comments that was shared last week that I introduced to the group and then some of the employers. I said, we need you guys to tell us, who you're going to hire and the skills that they should have. And we need you to, and it's in your best interest to work with us to build that curriculum so that those individuals come in, kind of shovel ready. Now, and I said, I left an open invitation. I said, you have a willing partner. Capitol is Hartford's community college, right? And if you were to look at the higher education landscape, in Hartford, we're it, right? I got close to 3,000 students credit, maybe another 2,000, and I have more students that live in Hartford zip codes than anybody else in the world, right? So Capitol has over 1,000 people whose zip code is in Hartford. That's more than any other higher education entity, and so we take that very seriously, and we view our role, with regard to ensuring that those people that live in these Hartford zip codes have job opportunities, that allow them to buy these homes here, stay here, pay their taxes here, and raise their families here, right? And so we're working on that. I've only been in the role 23 months. One of the things that we have talked about doing is bringing in some technical expertise around doing an analysis of the job opportunities, by pulling in the employers, talking to them, and then building out specific curriculum for those new programs, right? And so we've actually had some talks with Hartford Foundation around doing some of that work. That's an interest. They're interested in race, place, and income right now, and we think that we're kind of a key cog in that endeavor. We did an analysis. We had an equity summit in December, and Anna Stansberry, who's a economist out of Harvard, came and she did some analysis of the data. And she, what the data revealed was that Capitol Community College is in the top 5% of community colleges in the nation with regard to, for the students that complete a degree, that they're able to move up income quartiles, right? So an individual that comes from Hartford has some of the poorest zip codes in the nation. When you look at and you do an analysis of household income, and depending on the index that you're looking at, they might suggest that Hartford is the 4th poorest city in the nation, right? I heard that stat before, depending on how you're looking at that. However, that student from that zip code that has a median household income of $25,000, should they come here and complete my cybersecurity degree or my nursing degree or one of the other degrees that I offer and go work, it allows them to move themselves and their family out of poverty. And when you look at capital and how we're able to do that, I've got the largest nursing program in the state. I've got over 300 nursing majors, right? So what about that person from that zip code that is one of the poorest zip codes in the nation, who comes to Capital, who completes that nursing degree, who has the grit, comes in and finishes? Now, what are they able to do? So, so once again, as we talk about workforce jobs, I think I've shared with you before this, when you get an email from me, the bottom says, first job, a better job, your career, right? And as we talk about the continuum, I recognize that many of my students may not have ever had a job. They didn't grow up with George Harris, every day who I'm cutting lawns at 7 or 8, and shining his shoes to learn, work ethic. And so sometimes we recognize that there's a need for us to help our students get that first job, and there's nobility in that work at retail or working wherever, or, and they're learning those essential skills about being on time and the corporate culture wherever they're working, things like that. And so we need to help our students find that first job. Now, after they take Excel, or they take an accounting class or public speaking, I expect them to use that education to get a better job that might pay, instead of $10, $18 an hour. It might have better hours. It might have benefits, right? But they're using what they learned at Capital to flip that into a better job. And then the last part of that continuum is, shame on us if, as a result of the time they spend with us, they don't have a sense of the career spectrum and what they want to do for life, right? And a career, right? So you and I have careers in workforce and education. We've certainly had jobs, over that career, but we have a career that's fulfilling to us, that we've trained and acquired skills for. So we want to make sure that as a part of our experience at Capital, wherever they're coming in, whether that's first job, finding that better job, as an apprentice at the Hartford in our apprentice program, right? And then finally a career in terms of one of the career domains. And so we're in the process of engineering, kind of how we're structured so that students, where students work matters. Our students, I was undergrad, I went to UConn, lived in the dorm. My students live at home, right? And so they work, and so we need to know where they're working. And hopefully, oftentimes, do you want to work at Travelers instead of working at fill in the blank? So here's here's our Travelers program called The Edge. Shout out to Tar Spain and the folks at Travelers for investing in us in the Edge program. We've got executives, on the whatever, I guess they're working from home now, but in the past, they would have been on one of the upper floors at Travelers that started at Capital in our Travelers Edge program, right? And they worked their way up. We honored one of them at with our alumni award last year, who's an executive at Travelers. But they started here. They're taking their accounting, finance. We equip them with those essential skills. And so we get that Hartford needs us to be great. Hartford needs a vanguard community college. If you look at urban cities, a good friend of mine is in Cleveland. One of my mentors is the president of Cuyahoga Community College. And Cuyahoga, they call it, they're the other triple C, Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland. They do amazing work for Clevelanders, right? And that community knows that they could rely on Cuyahoga to kind of get them to employment, whether that's non-credit, credit, or whatever. And so that's how we're, organizing ourselves here.
Just a quick question here. Can people with degrees who already have a 4-year degree, master's degree, even doctorate degree, come back to CCC to take classes?
Yeah. What we're going to find in this economy, and that's a good question, is that, oftentimes people are going to need to find might have to make career changes, dramatic 180s. And so oftentimes, one of the most effective ways to do that is to come to a community college. Where you can get an associate's degree in a particular field. Let's say you wanted to do radiological technology, rad tech, but you have a degree in an MSW, or you have an MBA, something happened, and you want to come back to retrain to enter into a different field. Oftentimes, the place that you could do that is the community college. One of the things within that, oftentimes all of your gen ed requirements are done. So typically an associate's degree is 60 credits. You kind of got all your English and math and fine arts and all the gen ed done. So you're really only taking kind of core curriculum in order to get an associate's degree. We have a number of students in our nursing program already have bachelor's degrees in other areas, and they'll come back to pursue a career in nursing or cybersecurity. That's a hot field right now. We have one of the few cyber programs, associate degree in the area, and that's kind of buzzing right now too. A lot of job security in that. So yeah, definitely a place for folks to engage in lifelong learning, credit or non-credit.
So just second to last question, folks like me, we oversee the Strive Connecticut program at Career Resources, which is a workforce readiness program, and we focus on soft skills. Talk to groups like me, talk to others who are listening who say, I like what you're saying, Dr. Harris. We want to work with, align with Capital. How can we become partners? How can we walk alongside the school and be a part of the journey of the school and to help you and the teachers and the administrators at the school succeed?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we need to get in the room together, right? And we start with the student in the middle. I guess the analogy that once again that I've been using is kind of this Venn diagram. Here's what I do well. Here's what you do well, and my student is also your client, right? And so what parts do I handle? What parts do you handle? And the likelihood of us, structuring that in a way increases the ability of that person we both care about being successful. And us working in silos diminishes the ability of that individual to be successful, right? Or us working in silos and not sharing the limited resources that we have for the benefit of that student also compromises their ability, right? So you bring and it might even be three of us, but let's say you had 50% and I have 50%, right? When we put that together, now that individual has 100% of the supports and resources that they need to access, a better life for themselves and their family. And so philosophically, that's how we're beginning to operate. We actually we're not done yet, but we have, we're doing an audit of all of the community-based organizations in our region, right? And some individuals we have very deep relationships with. Others we really should, and we're kind of like, all right, well, why aren't we working with that particular group, right? So that you could imagine kind of this spreadsheet of kind of Capital, who's the person, who's the contact, how is that? How are we? Do we have mutual aims with regard to support of my student, which might be their client, et cetera? And so we actually we just completed a master plan. And so even though we're at 950 Main, when you put dots around the city and the region, I've got students at all of the hospitals. We're offering classes in the State House. We have students over at Hartford Stage. We're working with Blue Hills Civic. We're working with you guys, working with OPP, et cetera. And so, but when you do the map, you can see where the kind of partnerships are, whether that's early childhood ed, our students are out doing, internships and clinical exercises and things like that. So we're doing that. But what I would suggest is that it could be even more and even operate more efficiently, right? To ensure that we share information about, these people that we care about. And like I said, from one, for all intents and purposes, as a nonprofit, we're a nonprofit state agency, just like you guys are a nonprofit. This idea that our resources are limited, right? And so we should be beholden to work together differently, to leverage the limited resources that we have to improve outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. I don't always have 100%, but I got 50, and I'll put my 50 with your 50. And now all of a sudden that person that once again we care about, that citizen, has 100%. And they wouldn't have made it with just my 50 or just your 50, resource wise.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the work.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in our town, partnership has to be, I guess, the way forward. For reasons you talked about, but I think also for reasons that perhaps the client can't fully articulate. And it's important, for more organizations to partner, and certainly I'm a big believer in that. So I'll just leave it at that. That I do agree with you deeply. I really appreciate the time, but I definitely want to give you the floor to talk about CCC, to talk about enrollment opportunities that are coming up. School is starting up in a couple months in the fall. Just whatever you want to share with us about CCC and how folks can get connected to the school. Floor is yours, man.
Yeah, well, appreciate that, and thank you for this time that we spent. I think it's important for people to hear us talk about what we believe and what we think and what we're committed to do for our community. And so I wanted to thank you for that. This platform to do that. What I will say is that we didn't talk a lot about COVID, right, and the impact of COVID on our community. And what's interesting about that is that Capital, we're going to be open. How we're going to be open, we're working on those plans. We're part of the Reopen Connecticut in terms of the higher education component of that, where we're mapping out things in the lobby, where people need to stand. We're acquiring masks for all of our employees. We're looking at how many students can sit in a classroom and maintain appropriate social distancing. So we're in the midst of all that. We're going to be open. And like I said, how and the methodology of the delivery of the instruction will be what we're kind of finalizing now. We are March 13th. That night we shut down the campus, and our students completed the remainder of the semester in an online format. Our faculty rallied. It's interesting. We were going into spring break, and they all worked on their classes. They coming in, they're filming lectures. They were asking for software. They were, converting the remainder of the semester so that our students could finish. We had our virtual commencement graduation on the 21st this month, and so we're going to be prepared to do that again if we have to, but even better. So even this summer, all of our classes are fully online. Students, are taking, we have kits and simulations and sim software, to do anatomy and physiology. Who knew, right? So there's a piece to that, though. What I will say is that, especially for, our students who may have families, other commitments, I think that that's a good thing in the long run. That now I could, if I got to be home or at the bus stop at 3, that doesn't mean that I have to stop out of college or that I can't go to college. Because now I could go to the bus stop, but then jump on my online class at 3:30 or at midnight when the kids are asleep and I'm wide awake, right? And so there will be a byproduct of all this COVID, that is that Capital will be more prepared, better prepared to deliver distance-based education for our citizens who have very complex lives, and that this allows them in a very different way to integrate that. Now, the other thing with that is that our graduating seniors from all these schools, and my son is at home. He's at Windsor High. He's been online. The remainder too. Since March also, right? And when I'm home, I'll look at him, and he's doing presentations. He's doing research and information literacy, and I'd imagine it's as engaged, although different, as it would be in person. So now all these seniors that are listening, or people who are listening who have seniors and cousins and this and that, they should think about going to Capital. I don't know that I would go to Virginia State right now. Or Howard. My daughter went to Howard, but they might be home in a couple weeks. They might be in a dorm with where there's a breakout, and they might be online anyway. But now, would I pay Howard tuition, or would I pay Capital tuition? if you know, and a lot of our students are eligible for financial aid. If somebody gets a Pell Grant, this is demystifying, which tends to be about $6,100 for the year. That pays for 2 semesters at Capital with a computer, laptop that you can get from the bookstore, and some money for the internet. So I think that there's a piece to it where I'm not, and we're as committed, and I'm talking about the rigor and the outcomes as any other school. I've got faculty that teach here and at Central and at UConn and other. They're using the same textbook, but you're paying 10 times as much. So I say all that to say that right now, based on some of the uncertainty, based on the economy, based on the need to be in school somewhere, right? I think that Capital is an option in a very different way than it may have ever been in our history for our community. And we'll be ready. We've got virtual online, admission stuff we're doing. The last thing I'll say, and that I didn't get a chance to talk about, is that July 1st, we're rolling out a Black and Latino male teacher preparation program. And I'm actually going to be one of the instructors in it. I'll be teaching the first year experience class. We're identifying mentors. So we're looking for probably about 20 Black and Latino males that are interested and may think they may be interested in being a teacher. And we'll link them with coaches, throughout the time. But we'll get them prepared to enter into the schools of education within the state, right? So they'll start here. We'll provide them with, work experience, mentoring, and quality instruction. And so part of what we're doing in response to all of this is that Capital will be a producer of Black and Latino male teachers, for our state. And so we're launching that program. I'll get some more information out to folks, but there'll be a process to apply for that. And but we're very excited about that. We didn't touch on some of the images and things like that, especially with men. But I think as we talk about what we're going to do, I know me personally, I'm gonna grow some Black and Latino teachers that we're gonna put in these schools to be concordant mentors for young Black and Latino males that may haven't had the opportunity to see somebody that looks like them, be scholarly and impart knowledge and be at the front of the classroom. So, as I was pondering this weekend, like you, I was like, all right, I got to get that program out. And that's kind of something that we could do. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you as it relates to kind of what's going on. So come on. We got something for folks, and Capital is Hartford's community college, a Vanguard college, right? And that's what we're trying to do. And we're not gonna just talk about it. We're gonna be about it. I'm a hip hop CEO too, so
it makes economic sense. Yeah. It makes academic sense. It makes professional sense. Man, I love how you were selling Capital. No shades at HBCUs. Definitely want to shout them out. But man, save a couple dollars and stay home this semester. Before we wrap, man, I do want to touch on George Floyd. As we were sitting here, the news just came out that all 4 police officers have been charged in some way with the death of George Floyd. And this indeed is not a political podcast, and nor is it about to be. But I do want to echo something you shared, and I shared with my congregation on Sunday, that I am not the pastor you will find storming down to the state capitol protesting, and nor am I the pastor to say it's wrong. That's just not my lane. We know people in our city who are literally called to do that, to protest, to bring attention to it, to issues that plague our community. But what I will say, my calling is very similar to yours in that you are intent to build Black and brown educators. I am intent to bring on board people who understand and can serve at a high quality the plight of high barriered families who are overwhelmingly Black and brown. And I intend, under my watch, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, to deliver quality programs that respect where our clients are coming from. I learned long ago when I was working in public housing that the people we serve are people who don't get respect anywhere else. They are treated like the scum. They are treated like they are less than. And I vowed early in my career when I was still living in Philadelphia, working in PHA, shout out to PHA, that Philadelphia Housing Authority, that whenever people came into my office, came into my presence who were low income, they will be treated like the high-end client that they are. Because if people didn't live in the public housing facility, if people didn't attend my program, if people didn't go to Capitol, there is no revenue. I might as well just get on a soapbox. Here's the thing about nonprofits that people don't understand. Without the traffic of our clients, we can't pay bills. Now, our clients may not pay as much, they may not pay anything at all. But the way we get grants, the way you get attention for capital is by having traffic. And traffic comes as a result of you still offering a high quality experience that respects where people are coming from, that supports them. And Career Resources is in the same boat. Every nonprofit we know of is in the same boat. So it behooves us as a community, as a society, particularly people of color, to treat people of color, people of low socioeconomic status, as if they can buy that Gucci purse or those Gucci shoes or that Louis Vuitton belt and legit afford it, because they make a way for us to earn a living. They make a way for us to keep our lights on. And and we should be thankful to be called to serve in the capacities that we're in. I'm not trying to preach anybody. I'm just saying that if you're in this space, serving in a nonprofit space, listening to Dr. Harris, and certainly listening to me, I mean, it is our duty to love and respect all of our clients, no matter where they're coming from. If you have a record or not, if you're on SNAP or not, if you're on food stamps or not, I'm going to speak on behalf of CRI. We love you. We're going to respect you. And Dr. Harris, I mean, you can respond to that how you feel, but that's where I'm called to be. That's what I'm called to do, man. Shout out to those who are going to protest, but certainly if you're going to come where I'm running a program at Strive or CRI, you will be retreated. Doors will be open for you because you deserve them.
Yeah, I mean, my response would be amen, right? I think it's but I would say also that we're like-minded in that regard, and we work at like-minded institutions, right? And so very noble work.
Yeah.
And I think that I know when I'm hiring people, I listen for that in their responses as it relates to how they're wired and the fire in their belly and passion for serving, right? And so I've been fortunate to be allowed to join the folks at Capitol. And so one of the things that I have uncovered over the last 2 years is that people are wired in that way, and that when they come into the building, they come here, they could teach anywhere. I've got folks with Harvard PhDs that choose to work here and educate my students. 36% of which are Black, another 31% Hispanic. So we are one of the blackest and brownest community colleges in New England.
Yep.
And so by the nature of who we are and who we serve here, the individuals who are fortunate to be granted the opportunity to work here, and that's how they, that's the way that they're wired. And so, and the last thing you mentioned, George Floyd, and so, I think I may have said it. My father's name is George, right? And my brother and nephew, and so this weekend, when I was oscillating between seething anger and hopeless despair and tears, it really caused me to refute hopelessness, and that came out like, well, but what are you going to do?
That's right.
Right. And I, like you, I'm not at the protest, I'm there in spirit, but I'm not there, but I will make sure that that my police that work here are mindful how they may be perceived. I'll make sure that we're having a forum here next virtually next Wednesday for the faculty and staff, and I've invited certain people to kind of come talk and set the stage for what we will do as an institution in response, not in reaction, but our response to what we've lived through in recent events. And so, I think, as a person who's been traumatized by recent events, similar to you, that my response though is what are you going to do as the CEO of this organization, and what responsibility do we have? And so, once again, wrapping up, just thank you for this opportunity to share with your viewers, how we're responding as Black men who look like George, or these Georges, or these Arbery's, have been in situations where somebody could have elected to cause us to not be able to exercise our God-given right to breathe, or to live. And so, it's like I said, I think I'm formulating my response, and it'll be in them teachers, and it'll be in the people you send over here, or these partnerships that we build to strengthen our community, and that's what we can do. So thank you.
Man, I think you just spoke the sentiments of my heart. I want to thank you for your service. People like you, and other brothers who are on the front line, serving our community, doing all that you can. I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for making capital available to Hartford, man. And we wish you much success on this journey. This is Dr. William Clark for Career Resources. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace, everybody.
Take care.